Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) in dilemma as unfavorable Supreme Court judgment may affect preparations for a do-on-do governorship elections. Federal government says second recession in 4 years looms in the third quarter of 2020 as external debt service continues to hit deep on Nigeria. Hello and welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and of course all around the world. This is Firecrackers and of course I am Kelly Egiga. Let's begin with our COVID-19 update now, as Nigeria on Saturday recorded 601 new cases of the novel coronavirus, according to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC), even as the global death toll crossed the 800,000 mark. Now, Lagos, the country's COVID-19 epicenter, reported the highest number of cases with 404, while the Federal Capital Territory posted 37 new infections. Now, other regions with new cases include Oyo with 19, Ondo with 14, Abia with 13, Enugu 13, Kaduna 13, Edo and Kano with 12, Kwara 11, Ebonyi with 10, Nasarawa 7, Ogun 6, Osun 5, Delta with 5, Niger with 5, Plateau 4, Bayelsa 4, Katsina 3, Ekiti 2, and Imo 2. Now, the NCDC also reported that one new death on Saturday, bringing the country's death toll to 997. Confirmed cases rose to 51,905, out of which 38,767 patients have recovered. Meanwhile, the number of deaths from the new coronavirus has surpassed 800,000 around the world. Now, according to an AFP tally based on official sources, in total, 800,004 fatalities have been recorded globally out of over 23 million declared infections. Latin America and the Caribbean is the region most affected, with 254,897 deaths. More than half of global losses have been reported in 4 countries: the United States, Brazil, Mexico, and India. Now, here is a premise and opening argument to one of our major discussion today. Without mudslinging the current administration at the wheel, Nigeria, it appears, cannot afford more external debt borrowing. External debt service continues to hit deep on the country, and this is due to the rising external debt accumulation following the successful Paris Club debt deal and the exit from the London Club debt. Nigeria's external debt stock dropped to $3.54 billion in 2006. Now, fast forward to 2019, the country's external debt rose to $26.94 billion, representing 606% rise in 14 years. Bearing current realities of revenue crisis, the Nigerian government slashed the price of PMS, that's petrol, a move targeted to easing of revenue decline pressure and controversial subsidy payment in the country. Meanwhile, the spread of COVID-19 continues to dampen growth outlook world over, and Nigeria ranks top among countries suffering worse hit in terms of the trickle-down effect. Now, so the big question to ask is, what next for our Nigerian economy? Well, that question will be answered by my guest in Enugu, here in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial hub, and we are also live in the United Kingdom in just a moment. But around the world in 5 minutes or less starts right now.
Convicted fraudsters, money launderers and political figures accused of corruption are among dozens of people from more than 70 countries who have brought so-called golden passports from Cyprus, according to a large cache of official documents obtained by Al Jazeera's investigative unit. The Cyprus papers is a leak of more than 1,400 passport applications approved by the government of the island nation between 2017 and 2019, and it raises serious questions about the Cyprus investment program. Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warned the country is on brink of nationwide outbreak following the highest daily number of coronavirus cases recorded since March. Meanwhile, India is generating the highest number of daily new cases in the world for the last 18 days, with over 50,000 fresh cases every day. More than 23.1 million people have been diagnosed with COVID-19 around the world, and more than 14.91 million have recovered. At least 804,400 people have died, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. The new coronavirus is circulating 4 times more among people under 40 in France than among over 65 years old. France's Health Minister Olivier Véran said, as the country reported an additional 3,602 new COVID-19 cases. A key meeting between Mali's coup leaders and mediators from West Africa's regional bloc seeking a return to civilian rule ended after just 20 minutes. The talks on Saturday were set to last 90 minutes according to a provisional schedule set by the Economic Community of West African State ECOWAS. It was not clear if the schedule had been changed or talks were cut short. Allegations by Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko that foreign powers are organizing a build-up of troops on the country's border are baseless, according to NATO. Dressed in military fatigues, the president said he had placed his armed forces on high alert. Protests continued in the street of capital Minsk on Saturday, following a disputed election 2 weeks ago. Now, demonstrators are demanding that Mr. Lukashenko stand down. U.S. President Donald Trump has declared that wildfires burning through homes and devastating precious forestry in California are a major disaster, and he has released federal aid. Over 14,000 firefighters are battling 585 fires that have now burned nearly 1 million acres. Forecast high winds are threatening to drive flames into more populated areas as foul air blankets the state. At least 6 people have died and thousands have evacuated. Most of the destruction has been caused by 3 large fire complexes in mountainous and wooded rural areas. And finally, U.S. House of Representatives has passed a bill that would inject $25 billion into the Postal Service ahead of November's election. The legislation would also block cuts and changes that critics have said will hamper mail-in voting. Democratic Speaker Nancy Pelosi recalled lawmakers from the summer recess to vote on the bill, which she said would protect the USPS. After the vote, President Trump tweeted the measure was a Democrat ballot scam.
To numerous inquiries on the position of ASU on reopening of universities. As we have continually stated in recent weeks, our demands in the ongoing strike action predated COVID-19 pandemic or even the resurgence of government's insistence on forceful migration of lecturers to the IPPIS platform. As we speak, 5 months' salaries of our members at the University of Maiduguri, UNIMAID, and Michael Okpara University of Agriculture, Umudike, are still withheld by the Accountant General of the Federation on account of non-registration on IPs. Thousands of other academics across the universities are suffering the same fate. So, while we cancel that government at both federal and state levels must meet the task force specified guidelines for the opening of educational institutions, we insist that all the arrears of the withheld salaries of our members in federal and state universities must be paid immediately to pave way for further discussion on the outstanding issues in the Memorandum of Action of 7th February 2019. The national leadership of ASUU received the news of the purported removal of the Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos, UNILAG, by the Governing Council, chaired by Dr. Wale Babalaki, SAN, with absolute shock and total disappointment. We are shocked, not because we regard Professor Oluwatoyin T. Ogundipe as a saint, but for the fact that all available evidence indicates that he was not taken through the due process. In spite of Dr. Babalakin's spirited efforts to defend the indefensible, it is now clear to all and sundry that there is more to the story coming from the senior member of the bar.
Welcome back. You're watching Firecrackers, and we are live from our studios here in Lagos, Nigeria. Now, we have FG's external borrowings and debt servicing as focus today. We also have the Edo-Ondo elections also in focus. However, we also have the University of Lagos leadership tussle. It's been in the news for almost 3 weeks to 1 month now. The university has suffered a lot of crisis in this period. It's been a battle, a tussle between the major players, of course. But to talk about this crisis, who better than the UNILAG ASUU chairman, Dr. Dele Ashiru. Many thanks indeed for agreeing to speak with Galaxy TV.
Thank you very much for this invitation.
It's been a probably very trying time for the association, hasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly has been, because you know, when you have an institution where stability seems to be a challenge and the centers seem not to hold, the consequence actually is on those who work there. And as a union of intellectuals that we represent, we have had to engage in this crisis in such a manner as to still keep our head afloat within the situation that we have found ourselves.
Well, because you're probably appearing on our station within this crisis probably for the first time, talk us through what exactly played out. I mean, at a point it appeared we had 2 vice chancellors in one university. How could this be?
Well, as you may be aware, we have a pro-chancellor, Dr. Wale Babalaki, who thinks that the University of Lagos is an extension of his private estate, particularly his chambers. Because of that mindset, he had no respect for all the organs, governance organs and structures within the university. The law establishing the University of Lagos stipulates that in the event of a vacancy,
okay,
which has not been the case legally, the council reserves the right to appoint an acting vice chancellor on the recommendation of Senate. That's what the law says, and that's very clear.
I need to go over that again so we can get it. Just go over that act again, or that law again.
The law establishing the University of Lagos stipulates that anytime there's a vacancy in the office of the vice chancellor, the council reserves the right to appoint an acting vice chancellor on the recommendation of the university senate,
okay,
which follows ipso facto that before any pronouncement about anybody who wants to act in that capacity, Senate must be consulted. In this instance, not only did Dr. Wale Babalaki engaged in the illegality of purportedly removing the Vice Chancellor, he also unilaterally, without consulting anybody, any organ of the university, imposed on us a so-called acting Vice Chancellor. Okay. And to that extent, of course, our union rejected that position. The Senate of the university also rose in unison to say that, well, council has the right to hire and fire, but council must only do that after due process.
Dr. Ashiri, because I have followed this crisis or this leadership tussle for quite some time now, I have also listened to Dr. Wale Babalaki on some other national TVs, and he has cited that the Senate has not met for a long time now, and probably that is the reason why they went ahead with this decision. So does the law, the acts, make provision for a case where the Senate probably would not meet? What should happen? Should there be that vacuum?
Well, Dr. Wale Babalaki is just being economical with the truth.
You think so?
Yes.
Tell us why, please.
Senate has not met for some time, yes. But that does not abrogate Senate. That doesn't mean that there's no Senate in the university. If, for example, he wrote to Senate, because there are senators as of right in the university. All professors in the university are members of the university senate. If he wanted to go through the due process, all he needed to do is ask the university registrar to convene a senate meeting.
Okay.
And then put the question before them. This is the situation in the university. Could you meet to recommend to council a senator? If after doing that there was no recommendation from Senate, or they declined, he could then go ahead to do any of this contraption. But you remove the Vice Chancellor in the morning and install the surrogate Vice Chancellor 5 p.m. in the evening. It's clearly in violation of the law. These are practices that are alien to the academic tradition. That can happen in MM2 or in Wale Babalaki chambers, where only one person cuts the shot. In a university established by law, there are procedures, there are processes, and those processes cannot be unilaterally abrogated.
Because that's what the ASU and I think the Senate has always clinched on, that they should have followed due process.
Oh,
but
sure.
As a senior advocate of Nigeria, Dr. Babalaki insists that due process was followed. But amongst other things, the embattled Vice Chancellor, Professor Gundipe, according to Dr. Babalaki, was also accused of gross misconduct. Now, I also listened to another interview where Babalaki granted, and he said the pro-chancellors were to meet, and then he said those meetings were disrupted on 2 occasions by ASU, UNILAG. Is that true?
That's not true. We have never disrupted any meeting. Never, ever. And I didn't hear him say that. Never ever we have. How could a union of intellectuals disrupt meetings? The only thing that happened, okay, was that we had evidence that he had a hand in the cancellation of the 51st convocation ceremony of the university, and our Congress met and found that the role he played in the cancellation of that convocation did not consider the psychological trauma on students, parents, staff, well-wishers of the university, the psychological trauma on the students, the huge financial implication on the university, the consequence of the cancellation on the name, reputation, and the age-long cherished image of the University of Lagos. And on the strength of that, we passed a vote of no confidence in his leadership. That was what we did. We never disrupted any meeting. We never entered any meeting. We never did any of such. So if that happened, maybe in the figment of his imagination, but that never happened.
Dr. Ashiru, as we begin to wind down now on this topic with you, because we are really pressed for time, parents who are at home watching us now might not be concerned about all of this leadership tussle. I mean, they're more interested about their children going back to school. ASU has been on strike for some months now, I think almost 5 months or thereabout. They are more concerned about their children going back to the four walls of learning, or even, I'm wondering why we don't even have an e-learning system for most of the tertiary institutions. I mean, even the primary and secondary schools made provisions for pupils and students to switch or cross over to e-learning, but undergraduates are at home.
One of the reasons why ASU is on strike is this very point that you have raised: funding of education. Parents should stop being selfish. They should take more than a passing interest in what is going on in Nigerian universities.
And how do you mean?
Yeah, but because you say they want their children to go back to school. Go back to which school? A school where there are no classrooms for their children to study? A school where they have hostels originally built for 16, 18 people are currently living there at the moment. Classrooms built for 20, 24 people, more than 1,000 people are studying in those classrooms. Teachers that are teaching your words are not paid salaries for upwards of 3-4 months. You are concerned. All you want is your children to go back to school. Parents, Nigerians should become more realistic and more alive to their responsibilities.
But who is responsible for admitting this student? Because sometimes it appears the
government. Because JAMB will send students to Unilag. You cannot say no. If you say you have space for 24 people, they say there are 1,000 people seeking admission, you have to admit them. Look, Nigerians must take an activist role in tertiary education in Nigeria, because no nation can rise above its level of educational advancement. And that is why Nigeria still suffer underdevelopment and undevelopment, because everybody wants to just muddle through without bothering whether the right thing is done. ASU is on strike to improve the facilities in the university. More than 10 years ago, we've been saying that these facilities should be improved so that in times like this, we can teach from the comfort of our rooms. Even the private schools that you are talking about, WhatsApp message and Facebook is not e-learning. What goes into e-learning is much more than what we are doing in Nigeria. So government must begin to get serious.
That's the platform to at least communicate and reach out to the students.
E-learning is much more than communication, and at the tertiary level, it's a different ballgame. So government knows what to do.
For how long are students going to be at home? I mean, it's been 5 months now. I mean, in most nations are
bear in mind that we are also in a pandemic.
Of course we are.
And consider the risk of only a student coming into the hostel.
How about even, for instance, we've had the exiting class or the transitional classes in secondary and primary schools going to sit to write the exams. Can't that be done for probably final year students or something?
Yeah, but there are policy makers who should think through, and like they're already doing. I listened to the Honorable Minister of State, issuing a framework, a template for those kind of things. But what we are saying is...
Let me also ask this, as we need to round off now very quickly. Is there a gap between the university and the federal government? For instance, when all of this crisis started, it took the federal government, the President, Muhammadu Buhari, probably a long time to even respond. Is there a disconnect somewhere?
That shows the kind of importance that is attached to education in Nigeria. And I think those in government are in a better position to respond to that. But as much as I know, what I think is happening here is that there's a deliberate attempt to de-educate Nigerians, because educated people are difficult, to oppress. So when you de-educate people, it's easier for you to give them whatever shit you care to. So I think that government is not taking education as seriously as they should. And it is the duty of Nigerians, all of us, parents, journalists, artisans, teachers, lawyers, to put pressure on government, because those societies that are making progress are doing so because they are not taking education with the kind of levity that we are taking it.
I may beg to differ with you, because I remember Buhari saying that he had promised to overhaul the educational system.
Promise.
But Dr. Dele Ashiru, the ASU chairman, University of Lagos, I believe that's a good place to anchor with you. We hope to see more of you on the show. Many thanks indeed for coming on the show.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's indeed a pleasure.
You're watching Firecrackers. We're back in just a moment. We'll take a few visuals. Since we are on education, let's just see these NANS protests calling for the reopening of universities, as well as some teachers calling out for pay of their 5 months salary. We are back in a moment. Stay with us.
Teachers are saying they should need
When this government came in power in 2015, we discovered that this government gave us a lot of promises, and I was one of the people that mobilized for this government, believing that we are going to have a Nigeria of our own. But today, when we look at the educational budget of this current government since 2015, compared to what we have in the past administration, it's nothing to write home about. We want, when they are borrowing money for other infrastructure like road, building, all sort of things, hospital and the rest, they should consider education. Education comes first. If they can't give us the percentage UNESCO asks them to give us, they should be considerate enough to give us the minimum.
We are telling the federal government to build an umbrella for us to move despite this rain. Our schools have been shut down for so long. Markets are now open. Campaigns are going on. Transportation is moving. What it clearly shows is that the educational sector is a sector that is not recognized in this country.
Of course.
The educational sector is a sector that is neglected in this country.
Of course.
But let us know, anybody who says he's concerned about coronavirus and is not taking the educational sector serious is a liar.
My dear brother, it is pertinent to understand that those who benefit for injustice are not relenting. If at all the federal government knows today that this is not injustice on us, then something should be done for Nigerian students to go back to school. For crying out loud, we have been home for how many months? We have been at home for how many months? Our institution have been closed down. It is high time. It is high time. If truly education is the bedrock, is the hallmark of productivity in this country, then our country, then our people, I mean the federal government, to reopen our schools.
Solidarity forever! Solidarity forever! Solidarity forever! We shall always fight for our rights forever! We shall always fight for our rights forever!
Livingstone College.
Livingstone!
We are the teacher of this Livingstone.
Yes!
We are the one that is making the money.
Yes!
5 good months salary.
Yes!
5 good months salary before COVID-19.
Yes!
Now, throughout of the COVID-19, no 1 naira, no 1 single cup of rice was provided for any of the staff. And up till now, the Livingstone own college is not saying anything regarding the money that he was owing before the COVID and even after the COVID. We, the staff, we are saying enough is there. We can no longer condone the humanity in this. This Baba that you are seeing,
is a neighbor.
his neighbor is the one that is feeding the man.
The gate man.
The gate man is working.
And he's working.
He does not receive any salary.
Welcome back. You're watching Firecrackers. Now, joining me at the table to talk more is Mazi Dr. Sam Ayamele. I hope I got that correctly. 2019 Lagos gubernatorial candidate. We also have a media consultant as well as a public affairs analyst. Well, a friend of the station, I must say, Ade Misaka. Gentlemen, many thanks indeed for coming on the show.
Nice to be here.
Yes. Away from the UNILAG crisis for a moment, let's talk other issues of national interest. The federal government's external borrowings. I have heard people say it appears that the sovereignty of Nigeria is about to be mortgaged. Well, allegations. I've also heard people say that it may take many more younger generations to come to even pay these loans and all of that. But let's start with you, Mazi. How terrible are things in terms of our borrowings?
Well, it's really very sad because the kind of economy we run, it's unfortunately we're more or less like a commodity dependent economy. I mean, we import virtually everything. I mean, thank God for the new government who's tried to see how much more we can do, you know, eat what you produce. But then that's not helping because, you know, most of our export is...
But that's a plus
yes,
for this administration.
It's helping, of course.
Okay.
It's a plus for the administration. That's why I said thank God for the PNB's administration who's building more, like consume what you produce. But you see, the problem here is that we've moved our dependency on oil over the bar. And then the oil revenues are not working. It's crashing all over. And so that's making our economy become so commodity dependent. And so what we're getting from what we are getting from revenues are rather being used to service loans instead of being used to help our infrastructure. So that's not balancing the equation at all. I mean, as we speak, from the DMO, you know, they say that our debt ratio is fine because it's about 30, percent. But if you look at it, how would you look at our GDP, 2.5, to what is expected of us? As we speak, the debt to China particularly is about $3.1 billion. And it's expected that we're supposed to pay that in 20 years with 2.5, percent rate payable over 20 years. And then we have, a 7-year grace period. That sounds really nice. But look at it. That's where the sovereignty becomes an issue. Okay. What if we don't?
What if we don't? That's a good place to leave it. Let's just hear his own first-hand reaction, Adeyemi. I mean, we are borrowing. Some people will say, we cannot do without borrowing. I mean, even the richest of economies, they still get to borrow. Is it bad? It's not a bad thing.
Well, it's not bad to borrow, but I want to ask you a question. You borrow to build infrastructure, safe to, let's assume that's what the loans are meant for, which I'm yet to see. We invest in a country.
I don't understand when you say. I don't understand when you say which are yet to see.
I'm coming to that. We'll invest in a country in turmoil. Woo! If you're borrowing to probably tell me you want to equip the armed forces to fight Israel against insurgents and banditry, and I'm seeing I'm seeing you buying things that we need at when needed, I'll take you seriously. An instance is probably buying a Tucano jet that will be delivered in 2022. The next thing is they probably want to buy an Apache that will be delivered in 2025, and that will be delivered in 2029. So are you telling me that you want the war to project that long? And who is coming to invest in your economy for you to actually have the foreign direct investment to recoup such and pay back? We've brought the future away. You borrow money and you want to spend $500 million on NTA. You borrow money, you want to spend $1.something billion to set up a policy on sub-Sahara agricultural thing that you've closed your border. And he said
the borders are just closed temporarily.
Yeah, no, but these are counterproductive policies.
Yeah, that's what
we also have the railway project.
The railway project cannot be credited to this administration. Let's correct that. The railway project started under General Sonia Abacha of blessed memory.
But we have to give credit to this administration for continuity, which is a major challenge in Nigeria.
It wasn't discontinued during Obasanjo's regime. It wasn't discontinued during Yar'Adua or Jonathan's regime. So it's a continuation. And let's get our facts right. It's said something like, all thanks to this administration that said we should eat what we produce. Medicare, Buhari, is he eating what we are producing in Nigeria? If not for COVID-19, slight-headed Buhari is out of the country. How shall Buhari came back from where? For what? Is it like, don't let us delude Nigerians and lie to Nigerians. These guys,
I do not understand. Are we saying, what are the positives for Nigeria borrowing?
You see,
what are the positives?
It will only be positive if those monies are probably deployed and you and I are sending for something beneficial that will be money spinning. Now the question is this: at the point in time we're borrowing to pay salaries.
Okay.
At the point we're borrowing to do, you see, and if you look at the loan,
so for you there are no positives
for now because they're not deploying well.
Let Mazi react to this. Are you saying that the federal government we cannot see positives at all for some of these deals with the international community?
Well, the truth is that they're not being transparent. They're not being fair to us. Unfortunately, both of us are on the same divide. So I think what would have made even this discussion interesting if we were not on the same divide. All right. I do not also support the federal government with the non-transparent.
Yes, we're actually supposed to. We hope that we can have someone with a different view via Skype. We are trying to see how that can be fixed as soon as possible in the course of the show, hopefully.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we're on the same side. I mean, there's no transparency to it because.
I'm just asking. No, there's a difference. What's the issue? Is it an issue of transparency, or is it the issue of having positives? I'm asking, are there no positives? Because I am in Lagos and I can at least see the railway project ongoing, which the federal government has a relationship with the Chinese government to fix. So are we saying there are no positives?
Can I ask a question? We go to China. We go to China to get these loans. I will now award the contract to a Chinese company.
We even get supplies from them. We can make them.
See how elementarily annoying it is. I borrow money from China to construct rail lines, and I'll give it to a Chinese company that will now make the profit and take back to China.
Okay.
And I'm still indebted to China.
So the question is,
why can't I just go to China or the Chinese engineering company and sign a build, operate, and transfer agreement? That is one. Secondly, you keep talking about rail lines. Is it only rail that we need in this country? Construct the rail lines from Lagos to Kano, Kano to Maiduguri to Port Harcourt, back to Cross River. And people are being killed, slaughtered daily in Kaduna, Zamfara. Even you cannot. I bet it will drive it. Go for Bogbomosho or you're to Bogbomosho, that bad road. If you survive that road, pray to God you survive banditry and armed robbers on the road.
So in your opinion, you are taking us to security, but this government would argue with you that things appear better. I mean, this administration would definitely appear. But let's say your thoughts.
Yeah, my thoughts is just clear. I mean, I want to be a lot more centralized on the fact that they're not being transparent with this entire process. Most of these loans are rather politically driven instead of economically driven. Now, if you look at it, yes, because if you look at it, if you have to look at infrastructure, or if, for example, if they encourage a lot of PPPs, just like I said, BOT, basically build on and then transfer, would have been fair. You look at, okay, we're generating what we have, we're spreading across with our tentacles, and then we're building ourselves. But that's not what is happening. I mean, that's why in Sri Lanka, in Zambia, it looks like Chinese is taking over the whole places, because they fund a particular institution, give you a lot of rules and regulations, tell you to waive sovereignty when you cannot. And that's likely going to what that's what's going to happen to us.
We're going to come back and talk about this whole sovereignty issue. But let's talk about the issue of transparency. Are we tying it to this particular administration, or we're looking at it as something that has been? Because I think it's been there. Let's
clear this issue. Okay. We had each dead body before 1999. Obasanjo came by miracle, by magic and negotiation, cleared it. We had the Egiga administration, they did a lot of things. You had the Jonathan administration, they started borrowing, but not as aggressively as this.
Pronounced as what we have.
Now, the question is this. You are borrowing as the federal government of Nigeria. The 20 some instances it's 22.7, some instances it's $27.9 billion no from China and what have you. For by federal government for Nigeria, there is no project of 1 cent to Southeast region.
Oh, that's another.
Hold your thoughts, Adeyemi. Hold your thoughts, Mazi. Yeah. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
To numerous inquiries on the position of ASU on reopening of universities. As we have continually stated in recent weeks, our demands in the ongoing strike action predated COVID-19 pandemic or even the resurgence of government's insistence on forceful migration of lecturers to the IPPIS platform. As we speak, 5 months' salaries of our members at the University of Maiduguri, UNIMAID, and Michael Okpara University of Agriculture, Umudike, are still withheld by the Accountant General of the Federation on account of non-registration on IPs. Thousands of other academics across the universities are suffering the same fate. So, while we cancel that government at both federal and state levels must meet the task force specified guidelines for the opening of educational institutions, we insist that all the arrears of the withheld salaries of our members in federal and state universities must be paid immediately to pave way for further discussion on the outstanding issues in the Memorandum of Action of 7th February 2019. The national leadership of ASU received the news of the purported removal of the Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos, UNILAG, by the Governing Council, chaired by Dr. Wale Babalaki, SAN, with absolute shock and total disappointment. We are shocked, not because we regard Professor Oluwatoyin Ti Ogundipe as a saint, but for the fact that all available evidence indicates that he was not taken through the due process. In spite of Dr. Babalakin's spirited efforts to defend the indefensible, it is now clear to all and sundry that there is more to the story coming from the senior member of the bar.
Crackers. We'll get to talk about Ondo and Edo elections very quickly, but let's take you live to Enugu, where we have Ambrose Igboke, media consultant, as well as a public affairs analyst, waiting to speak with us. Ambrose, it's good to see you again. It's been a very, very long time. But let's get your first-hand reaction to the federal government's external borrowings. I am asking, Ambrose, are there any positives at all to look at, one can consider when you look at external borrowings? Well, Ambrose, well, stay with us. I'm trying to confirm if we can sort the audio very quickly, because we can't hear any feedbacks from our end. So just stay with us. We'll be with you again, Ambrose. Let's just see how we can correct the audio hitches we are experiencing. We have Ambrose Igboke in Enugu State. But gentlemen, as we begin to wind down now on FG's borrowings, in your views, what are the ways forward? Let's start with you.
Well, we need to prioritize the sectors we're borrowing for and the projects we're borrowing for. And are they self-sustaining or sufficient enough? Do we have to have a serious, solid repayment plans? Yes, we see what happened to oil. Nobody expected COVID-19. Nobody expected such a sharp decline in the price of crude. But yes, price of crude has been dropping, has been fluctuating for the past 10 years. Which brings to fore again that the diversification agenda or claim of diversifying the economy by this administration is just on paper. Because if you are diversifying the economy, we shouldn't be in this mess.
All right, now, Mazi, Sam.
Well, simple. It has to be all inclusive. I mean, if you say you're borrowing for the economy, it has to be all inclusive. In the Southeast isn't really experiencing this.
Not a cent.
I don't understand how it's. Maybe they are going to come to the Southeast, but as we speak, well, I hear borrowing is getting a bit of. Well, I mean, if you say it's FG borrowing for Nigeria, it should spread across. Then encourage PPP. Let's do a bit of what we have inside. You know, the institutions are here, the financial institutions are here. Okay. Encourage them to spread more, you know, with CSRs and all of that, and then that will really help us.
Well, thank you very much. As we begin to wind down now, we'll just take another quick break and come back and see how we can again try to reconnect with Ambrose Igboke in Enugu. We're back in a moment. Stay with us.
will be at the end of affairs the most important. Local government is the most important area of governance, and I believe that this is the time to do it. And I know that these are
at the various polling centers try to cast their vote as a mark of responsibility of their civic duty. So today marks a very similar day in democratic development in Ondo State.
Welcome back. You're watching Firecrackers as we begin to wind on now on the show. We have guests here in the studios, Ademi Sakai, media consultant, and Dr. Sam Ayamele. Well, he prefers to be called Mazi, actually. But very quickly, we had the local government elections yesterday in Ondo State. Gentlemen, are you impressed by some of the events that played out just before the elections? And of course, there was this clash, allegedly by the APC, between the APC and ADC supporters. And then yesterday, according to senior correspondent in that state, Levy Joseph, the elections witnessed a rather low turnout. Are you positive in terms of looking at the fact that the governorship elections is just a few weeks away?
Well, I'm really very afraid for the governorship elections because about 22 parties are in court right now, suing for their names to be on the ballot, and then again, the matter is at the Supreme. So if for any reason the Supreme Court gives them judgment in their favor, then I don't think the October 12th will hold, because you have to still follow the rules and regulations of INEC, given all that. Apart from that, I'm just a little worried. So it might
probably affect the preparations,
it will affect the entire
dates,
chart, because again, you have to give about 60 days, information to INEC. You need to go through the rudiments of primaries and all of that. We did a bit of the elections, and we know. And so, except Supreme Court just keeps quiet, and that's going to even affect those states either, because now the 22 parties would have to produce their own candidates
as well,
and they have to follow the entire process. So if you look at that, it's a saga ahead of us.
Saka, if that happens, if the Supreme Court turns things around and throws INEC into the commotion and confusion that we are praying that it doesn't happen, Godwin Obaseki might be contesting, but not as an incumbent governor
officially.
What do you see happening?
Well, it's very sad that in all this is governance and the common man that suffers. That means that you have a governor looking above, looking behind himself. Is it safe? You see governance slowing down, because it's all about election and political survival and what. So it's for me, that's just the bad takeaway from this whole issue. Politicians are always the politicians. They're always desperate for it. It's not about interest of the masses. It's not about public service. It's about the office.
Let's talk about this issue of low turnout at elections. Why are Nigerians not coming out to vote? What is going on?
It's a very simple thing. I'll give you instances. Most political parties lack the basic thing in democracy. There's no internal democracy in all those parties. So probably I have a guy that's very popular in my neighborhood. I'm expecting to be a councillor, or an aspirant as a councillor in a particular party or political party, and you just heard that the leadership of the party came up with a list and the guy is not contesting. I won't turn out to vote because it's probably, and there's this thing about, I think ever since 2003 or there, about that State Independent Electoral Commission started conducting local government elections. It's about the state, the party in control at the state. It's a clean sweep and clear sweep for them. So so you can see that it's not really a total reflection of the political will and aspirations of the people.
Right, very quickly, Mazi, what are your thoughts?
Let me quickly add to that. I mean, what are you looking at? APC draws a 150-member campaign team for governorship election. It only means that people are probably waiting for that largesse. I don't know if you understand. It's technical because it's money politics.
That affects.
It's unfortunately it's money politics because the guys who are doing this local council are the same guys within the system. Where would they get the money to fund the necessary things to do? They won't.
Independent candidates probably would have made.
You will see the turnout during the governorship of that same environment. Yeah.
It happened in the presidency in the north. Presidential election you had massive turnout.
Governorship, people didn't show up. So it means there's some powers that comes with money politics.
Okay, I'm going to give you, gentlemen, 60 seconds each for your closing thoughts. Let me start with you, Saka. In 60 seconds, I would like you to do a summary of your thoughts concerning the Nigeria's external borrowing plan and the debt servicing. We also considered the countdown to the do-undo elections and what we are praying that doesn't happen, the battle between INEC and the Supreme Court. In 60 seconds, what are your closing thoughts?
No, the first one, I think the federal government should set out, come up with a priority list.
Okay.
What the sectors they're looking at that will be viable and probably get us to pay back those loans.
Okay.
When you keep saying rail, it's not just about rail. We should look at avionics, we should look at artificial intelligence, agriculture, forget about agriculture. China produces its rice, it still imports rice. So with that, and for the political crisis we are facing and praying against, I just try to get it right and politicians become less desperate.
All right, Mazi.
All right, so it's PPP, or the other word for it may be BOT, build and then transfer. But PPP will work because you're building this structure within. And again, be transparent, be fair, be economically driven in your policies, not politically driven, because power is transient. It will become another party tomorrow, or it will become another election tomorrow. Then again, of course, for the elections, please, our security agents, help us. I mean, a lot of people alleging that one party is sending, guns or thugs already into certain states. I mean, the security should be at that point where you can secure lives. Again, it could just be security of lives that probably made people in those didn't turn up because they will be brutal at that local level. So they probably won't turn up. So security must be on point, otherwise lives will be wasted.
Gentlemen, we'd like to thank you indeed for your time and your thoughts. We'll be speaking with Mazi Dr. Sam Ayamele, 2019 Lagos gubernatorial candidate, as well as a media consultant and public affairs analyst at DME Saka. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's about the size of the show today. Next week, well, we hope to have a special guest on the show next week, Jury Ngalale, the senior special assistant to President Muhammadu Buhari on public affairs, as we consider the state of our Nigerian roads. My name is Kelly Egiga, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.